We can barely hear you with the cone on your head. If you don't mind, if you would just pull it off, yeah.
Since 2002, there have been 3 live-action Spider-Man, and there has been a constant debate over the years of which Spider-Man is the best. Is it Tobey Maguire from the Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy? Andrew Garfield from Mark Webb's 2 films? Or Tom Holland from the MCU? All 3 actors were great, and most people agree that there's never truly been a bad Spider-Man. But most MCU fans agree that Tom Holland is their favorite Spider-Man. It's no secret that Tom Holland is a much different Spider-Man than the 2 that came before him. His portrayal of the role has led to almost 4 years of non-stop praise and criticism, though the criticisms are almost entirely about the films and the stories in them instead of Holland's portrayal of the character. So what is it that makes everyone choose Tom over the rest? Well, for starters, he looks and acts the part of a teenager far better than Tobey or Andrew ever did. As good as these other 2 Spider-Men were, the one thing both of them were missing was the high school vibe of the character. Tom Holland looks and behaves like a high schooler. And this is in part thanks to the fact that he was just 2 years off of the actual age of a high schooler when he got the role. To ensure he could perfect his role, he even went undercover as a high schooler in New York City, which led to his Peter Parker being a very believable one. He did a wonderful job of portraying all the characteristics of a common teenager, being somewhat nerdy and geeky at times, acting on impulses, and also by thinking he's a grown-up who's ready for more responsibility when he's clearly not. All this makes him relatable and realistic. A superhero who is supposed to be a teenager should in theory act like a teenager, and Tom handled that magnificently. Now, some people are quick to judge this MCU Spider-Man and claim that he's nothing like the real Spider-Man and that he's too advanced, and that he does really dumb things, and of course, they even call him Iron Man Jr. These are criticisms Tobey and Andrew never had to deal with, but they lived in a different time and world. You see, the big difference between Tom Holland's Spider-Man and the 2 actors that came before him is that he is a part of the MCU. Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man were never tied down within a world of aliens and Avengers. Tom Holland is a Spider-Man in a much different world, and the circumstances of his story make him a much more unique and a different interpretation of the character. Tom Holland's Spider-Man behaves how any of us would if we were a teenage superhero in the MCU. He is in constant awe of the world around him in every film he shows up in. He even gives away the Edith glasses because he's a child who thinks he's not ready for them. He struggles with the idea of being the superhero everyone is talking about. He doesn't like using Spider-Man as a party trick because in a world with gods running around, he would rather be one of them. He doesn't want to be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, he wants to be Spider-Man the Avenger. A big piece of Spider-Man Far From Home's story is about the legacy of Iron Man and how everyone assumes that it is Spider-Man. And he, of course, struggles with it. He was close to Tony Stark, and being the next Iron Man is a huge deal. While many people hate on MCU Spider-Man, and sometimes for very good reasons, there is no denying that his Spider-Man is realistic within the world he was abruptly thrown into. One moment he was wearing pajamas while stopping carjackings, and the next moment he was fighting Captain America and then Thanos. The other aspect of Tom Holland that makes him every MCU fan's favorite Spider-Man is his likability. Tom Holland easily has the most likability of all 3 live-action Spider-Men. Just consider how unwilling he is to give up no matter what's happening. Let's look at one moment in Spider-Man Homecoming. Before the climax of the film, Vulture dropped a building on Peter Parker. At first, Peter was afraid. He shouted for help, but no one came. And then he saw his mask laying in the water and remembered the words Tony Stark said to him.
If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it.
And with that, he found the strength to lift a giant piece of debris off of him and get back up and immediately go fight Vulture. In one short scene, Tom Holland's Peter Parker became the most likable of the Spider-Men. Him finding the strength to climb out of that rubble felt so real. Just like most heroes have their big moments, this was arguably Tom Holland's Spider-Man moment. And without question, this scene right here is probably the reason he became most people's favorite live-action Spider-Man. He's realistic, he's relatable, and most of all, he's likable. Tom Holland may be a very different Spider-Man from the ones who came before him, but for MCU fans, he is the best Spider-Man. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel and help us grow. And thanks for watching.